The Met Gala has always been a place for high fashion, elite power moves, and unforgettable celebrity moments. But this year, one appearance completely flipped the internet upside down. Blue Ivy Carter, just 14 years old, made her Met Gala debut alongside Beyoncé, and while the world initially praised the moment as royal and iconic, that excitement quickly turned into one of the most controversial conversations of the night. What was meant to be a proud family milestone suddenly turned into a storm of criticism, accusations, and conspiracy-level speculation online. Fans began questioning everything from how a 14-year-old was even allowed inside an event that officially enforces an 18-plus age policy, to whether special exceptions were quietly made behind closed doors just for the Carter family. And then the conversation got even darker. Social media users started accusing Beyoncé of pushing Blue Ivy into the spotlight too aggressively, with some even using extreme language like pimping out, arguing that the young star was being positioned more like a brand asset than a teenager experiencing a milestone moment. Others pushed back hard, defending Beyoncé as a protective mother simply introducing her daughter to a world she already belongs to. But the debate didn't stop there. Now, even more shocking claims suggest that industry insiders, including Blue Ivy's own grandfather, Matthew Knowles, may not fully agree with how things are being handled behind the scenes. Allegations, comparisons, and old family history are all being dragged back into the spotlight, turning a single red carpet appearance into a full-blown cultural controversy. So the real question is no longer about fashion or fame. It's about influence, control, and whether Blue Ivy's Met Gala debut was a proud introduction or the beginning of something far more calculated than anyone expected. The moment Blue Ivy stepped onto that Met Gala carpet, the entire energy of the night shifted in a way nobody really expected. Cameras flashed, reporters leaned in, and for a brief second it felt like the world was watching a classic, next-generation legacy moment unfold right in front of them. Beyoncé standing beside her daughter only amplified that feeling. It wasn't just a celebrity appearance anymore, it was history, it was symbolism, it was the Carters reminding the world that their legacy isn't going anywhere. But almost immediately after the initial applause, the internet did what it always does. It started digging, questioning, and dissecting every detail frame by frame. One of the first things people latched onto was Blue Ivy's age. At just 14, her presence at the Met Gala instantly raised eyebrows, especially because the event is widely known for its strict 18-plus policy. The Met Gala isn't just a red carpet, it's a tightly controlled, adult-oriented fundraising event tied to high fashion, celebrity culture, and massive security concerns. Over the years, organizers have emphasized that it's not designed for minors, both due to the nature of the environment and the scale of media attention involved. That's why the internet quickly split into two camps. On one side were people who saw Blue Ivy's appearance as harmless, even beautiful. They argued that she wasn't there alone. She was with her mother, and this wasn't some random exposure. It was a carefully guided introduction to a world she has technically been around her entire life. Beyoncé and Jay-Z are not outsiders to fashion, media, or elite celebrity circles. So for many supporters, Blue Ivy attending the Met Gala felt like a natural extension of her upbringing rather than something controversial. But on the other side, the criticism was much louder and more emotional. People began questioning whether a 14-year-old should be placed in such a high-pressure, hyper-exposed environment regardless of who her parents are. The Met Gala isn't just a photo opportunity, it's a global media storm where every movement is analyzed, every outfit is judged, and every moment becomes content within minutes. Critics argued that no matter how prepared someone might look, 14 is still extremely young for that level of exposure. Then came the next layer of controversy, the outfit itself. Blue Ivy appeared in a mature, structured designer look that many praised as elegant and fashion-forward. But others felt it didn't match her age, describing it as too grown, too polished, and too aligned with adult red carpet aesthetics. This sparked a wider debate that goes far beyond one outfit. It opened up the long-running conversation about how young celebrity children are styled, presented, and photographed in the public eye. Some critics argued that when a child consistently appears in mature fashion settings, it can blur the line between childhood expression and adult branding. They questioned whether repeated exposure to luxury fashion events might unintentionally shape how a young celebrity sees herself and how the public begins to perceive her identity. And that's when the conversation escalated even further. Clips from the red carpet started circulating online, showing Blue Ivy adjusting her posture, responding to photographers, and even wearing sunglasses during parts of the event. While many saw this as a teenager trying to navigate an overwhelming environment, others interpreted it differently. They argued that she looked slightly uncomfortable at times, and that the sunglasses acted almost like a barrier between herself and the intense media attention. One moment in particular went viral, when staff and even family members were seen subtly encouraging her to remove the glasses for photos. But Blue Ivy reportedly kept them on. That small detail became symbolic for many viewers. Some said it showed independence and confidence, while others said it looked like a child trying to maintain control in a situation she may not fully enjoy. From there, the conversation took a sharp turn into something much more controversial. Online critics began accusing Beyoncé of pushing Blue Ivy into the spotlight too aggressively. The language used across social media became intense, with some users suggesting that the entire appearance felt more like branding than a casual family moment. The idea being floated was that Blue Ivy wasn't just attending an event, she was being positioned. Now, it's important to understand how quickly narratives shift in the age of social media. A single red carpet moment can turn into thousands of interpretations within hours. And in this case, that's exactly what happened. Supporters of Beyoncé strongly rejected these claims. They argued that Beyoncé has always been extremely protective of her children's privacy and that Blue Ivy's appearances are rare, controlled, and intentional rather than exploitative. They pointed out that growing up in one of the most famous families in the world naturally comes with visibility, whether people approve of it or not. But critics weren't convinced. They started bringing up past moments, comparing earlier appearances of Blue Ivy at events and arguing that this wasn't an isolated discussion. It was part of a pattern they believe is becoming more visible over time. Some even claimed that the way Blue Ivy is introduced in public spaces mirrors a carefully managed transition into the entertainment world. And that's where things got even more complicated. Because once people start connecting patterns, the conversation stops being about a single event and turns into a larger theory about influence, control, and legacy building. And right in the middle of that storm, another unexpected name started trending again: Matthew Knowles. Suddenly, the conversation wasn't just about Beyoncé and Blue Ivy anymore. It was about family dynamics, generational perspectives, and whether even those closest to the situation might see things differently behind closed doors. And that shift set the stage for an even deeper and more controversial discussion about power, legacy, and the cost of growing up in the spotlight. That sudden shift in the conversation toward Matthew Knowles changed everything. What started as a Met Gala discussion about fashion and celebrity legacy was now turning into a full-blown family controversy being analyzed in real time by millions of people online. Matthew Knowles is not just any outsider commenting on Beyoncé's life. He's her father, and more importantly, someone who has already lived through the pressure cooker environment of managing young talent at the highest level. That alone made his alleged opinion on Blue Ivy's situation even more explosive. According to circulating discussions and online claims, Matthew Knowles reportedly believes that Blue Ivy's early exposure to major events like the Met Gala may be happening too fast. And while none of these statements have been officially confirmed in a direct, formal setting, the idea alone was enough to set social media on fire. Because when someone with his history in the music industry speaks, or is believed to be speaking, people pay attention. To understand why this hits so hard, you have to go back to Matthew Knowles' past with Destiny's Child. He didn't just manage the group in a casual sense. He built them under an intense, disciplined system that has been described over the years as highly structured, demanding, and extremely focused on performance. Destiny's Child wasn't just a girl group. It was a machine designed for success in one of the most competitive industries in the world. Long rehearsals, strict schedules, and constant pressure were all part of the environment they grew up in. Some former members have openly discussed how challenging that period was, especially at a young age. And that history is exactly why the current conversation feels so contradictory to some viewers. Because now, Matthew Knowles is being mentioned in the same breath as criticism of Blue Ivy's exposure, almost as if he is questioning the very type of early-stage spotlight that he once helped shape in a different era. That contradiction is what people online are obsessed with. How can someone who pushed young artists into global fame now allegedly be uncomfortable with another young member of his own family stepping into a high-profile fashion space? Supporters of Matthew argue that this is exactly why his perspective matters. They say he understands the industry better than most people criticizing him, and that his experience gives him a unique lens on how quickly fame can impact young minds. In that interpretation, his alleged concerns aren't hypocrisy. They're caution shaped by lived experience. But critics see something different. They argue that the same system he helped build is now being questioned when it appears in a new generation. In their view, the line between training young talent and overexposure is thin, and people often only recognize the risks once it involves their own family. Meanwhile, Beyoncé remains at the center of all this attention, and her silence only intensifies the debate. She has never been someone who engages heavily with public criticism or online narratives. Instead, she controls her image tightly, choosing when and how to appear in the spotlight. That approach has worked for her for years. But in moments like this, silence becomes a blank canvas that the internet fills with its own interpretations. Some fans argue that Beyoncé is simply giving her daughter opportunities to experience the world she was born into. From this perspective, Blue Ivy isn't being pushed, she's being guided. She is learning how to handle cameras, attention, and public presence in a controlled environment, surrounded by her mother, her father, and an entire team. They also point out that Blue Ivy has already appeared in creative projects, performances, and award-related moments over the years, suggesting that her comfort in these environments is not sudden or forced, but gradual. However, critics remain focused on one core concern: choice. At 14, how much of this is truly her decision, and how much is shaped by the world around her? That question is where the debate becomes emotionally charged. Because it's no longer just about celebrity culture, it becomes about childhood, agency, and what it means to grow up under global attention. Adding fuel to the fire is the comparison people keep making between Blue Ivy and other celebrity children who either remain completely private or only appear in low-profile settings. Some fans argue that Beyoncé and Jay-Z have always been selective with their children's exposure, but moments like the Met Gala feel significantly larger than typical family appearances. And then there's the fashion angle, which refuses to leave the conversation. The outfit, the styling, the posture, even the sunglasses, every detail is being analyzed as if it carries meaning beyond aesthetics. Some viewers interpret it as a confident young girl expressing herself in a high-fashion space. Others see it as a carefully curated image designed to fit into a luxury narrative that extends beyond a single night. What makes this even more complicated is how quickly public perception can shift. One viral clip can redefine the entire narrative of an event. A moment that was meant to be celebratory can turn into a debate about ethics, parenting, and industry pressure within hours. And just when the conversation seemed like it couldn't get more layered, another angle entered the discussion: legacy. People began asking whether Blue Ivy's Met Gala appearance was part of a larger plan to gradually introduce her into the entertainment and fashion industries. Not as a child star in the traditional sense, but as a long-term brand extension of the Carter empire. That idea alone sparked thousands of debates online. Supporters say it's normal for children of global icons to eventually step into similar spaces, especially when they show interest in creative industries. They argue that legacy is not manipulation, it's opportunity. Critics, however, see it differently. They worry that when legacy becomes branding too early, it can blur boundaries between personal identity and public image. They question whether a child raised in that environment can truly separate who she is from what she represents. And all of this circles back to one central tension: visibility versus protection. The more visible Blue Ivy becomes, the more people feel they have a right to interpret, critique, and analyze her presence. But at the same time, the more criticism rises, the more her family is pushed to defend their choices publicly or privately. It's a cycle that feeds itself. And in the middle of that cycle sits a 14-year-old girl experiencing one of the most high-profile nights of her life. Whether people see it as empowerment, pressure, or something in between, one thing is undeniable: the moment has already become bigger than fashion, bigger than celebrity culture, and even bigger than the Met Gala itself. It has become a conversation about fame, family, and the cost of growing up in a world where every step is watched, recorded, and judged in real time. And as the internet continues to debate every detail, one final question remains hanging over everything. Is this the beginning of Blue Ivy stepping into her own legacy, or the moment the world started deciding it for her? That question, whether Blue Ivy is stepping into her own legacy or having it shaped for her, is exactly where the conversation stops being just entertainment gossip and starts turning into something much more personal for audiences. Because at this point, people aren't only reacting to a red carpet moment anymore. They're projecting larger fears, opinions, and beliefs about fame, parenting, and the entertainment industry itself onto a single appearance. As the debate continued to spread, one of the biggest factors fueling it was how fast the internet amplified every small detail from the Met Gala night. A photo would drop, and within minutes it would be analyzed, reposted, slowed down, zoomed in on, and turned into a theory. Blue Ivy's posture, her expressions, her sunglasses, even the way she interacted with photographers, all of it became part of a much larger narrative that no longer belonged to just one event. Some viewers insisted that this is exactly what happens when someone grows up in the spotlight. They argued that Blue Ivy has been around cameras since birth, and that the Met Gala is simply a natural extension of her environment. In that sense, they see her appearance as confidence-building rather than controversial. To them, she wasn't being pushed, she was being introduced. But critics kept pushing back, focusing less on the glamour and more on the structure behind it all. They questioned whether a teenager can truly separate personal identity from public image when she is constantly surrounded by branding, media attention, and industry expectations. For them, the concern wasn't about one night, it was about the direction things might be heading. And this is where the conversation became even more emotionally charged. Because once people start discussing a child in the context of fame and exposure, the debate stops being purely logical. It becomes moral, protective, and deeply opinionated. Some people genuinely feel they are defending a young girl's childhood. Others feel they are defending a family's right to raise their child in the environment they choose. Meanwhile, Beyoncé remained silent publicly, as she often does when controversy builds around her personal life. That silence, however, only added more fuel to the fire. In the absence of direct clarification, people began interpreting everything, past interviews, old appearances, even family dynamics, as clues pointing toward a larger strategy or intention. Supporters of Beyoncé argued that her silence is intentional and protective. They say she doesn't engage with online narratives because doing so would only escalate unnecessary drama. From their perspective, Blue Ivy's appearance was carefully managed, age-appropriate within the context of her upbringing, and fully supported by her family. But critics saw that silence differently. To them, silence can sometimes feel like confirmation of speculation, even when that's not the case. So the theories continued to grow, especially as older clips of Blue Ivy's past appearances resurfaced, and were compared side by side with her Met Gala debut. At the same time, the conversation around Knowles continued to circulate online, even though much of it was based on speculation and interpretation rather than direct statements. Still, his name added a powerful layer to the discussion because of his history in the industry and his past experience managing young talent. Some people began framing the situation as a generational divide in how fame is understood. Knowles represents an older, more disciplined era of the music industry, one where structure, pressure, and early exposure were part of building successful acts. Beyoncé, on the other hand, represents a modern era where branding, image control, and carefully curated public presence dominate. And Blue Ivy sits right at the intersection of both worlds. That's what makes this situation so complicated. It isn't just about one opinion or one appearance, it's about how fame itself has evolved. What was once considered normal industry training decades ago is now viewed through a much more sensitive lens focused on mental health, childhood development, and public pressure. As the debate expanded, so did the number of voices involved. Social media influencers, commentary channels, podcast hosts, and even casual viewers started weighing in. Each perspective added another layer, but also made the overall picture more fragmented. Instead of reaching a conclusion, the conversation kept splitting into smaller arguments. Some people focused on fashion, analyzing Blue Ivy's outfit as a statement of elegance and maturity. Others focused on behavior, interpreting her body language as either confident or uncomfortable, depending on their viewpoint. And others zoomed out completely, using the moment as a way to discuss celebrity culture as a whole. And that's where the real story lies, not in whether one moment was right or wrong, but in how quickly public perception can shift when fame, youth, and legacy intersect. Because in today's world, a single appearance is never just a single appearance. It becomes content. It becomes commentary. It becomes debate material. And once that happens, the original intention behind the moment often gets lost in the noise. For Blue Ivy, this moment will likely be remembered in multiple ways depending on who you ask. Some will see it as her stepping confidently into a world she was born into. Others will see it as an example of how celebrity children are gradually absorbed into the machinery of fame long before they fully understand it. And for Beyoncé, the interpretation is just as divided. To her supporters, she is a mother carefully guiding her daughter through opportunities most people could never imagine. To her critics, she is a powerful figure navigating the fine line between protection and presentation in an industry that thrives on visibility. But regardless of which side people fall on, one thing is certain: the conversation has already taken on a life of its own. What started as a red carpet debut has now become a broader reflection of how society views fame, parenting, and legacy in real time. And once a narrative reaches that level, it rarely disappears quickly. Instead, it evolves, resurfaces, and gets reinterpreted every time new footage or commentary appears. So even as the Met Gala lights dim and the cameras move on to the next headline, the debate continues online, reshaped by every new opinion and every reposted clip. Because in the world of modern celebrity culture, moments like these don't end when the event is over. They continue living, growing, and being redefined long after the spotlight moves on. And that is exactly why this conversation is far from finished.